What up, y'all? It's T-Tar, and today we're looking at more of y'all's theories for Pokemon in 2024. Let's go. Theory: Pecharunt will make an appearance in Legends Johto. So this is actually an interesting one. The title explains itself. Hello, T-Tar. This theory will revolve around your previous video, which was around Pecharunt. So pretty much they get to the point of talking about the untold story of Pecharunt, where it told us just where Pecharunt came from and about that old couple that first raised Pecharunt. This is a reflection of the Momotaro story, of course. Look at the pictures in Japanese mythology. A little child coming out of a peculiar looking peach. What they bring up is maybe that old couple and Pecharunt are actually from the Johto region. Let me explain why this is a weird thought, but not impossible, that Pecharunt story originating in Johto. You see, the whole culture you can see in that untold story speaks Japanese. In the Ogerpon story, they made it sound like the greedy Pokemon that came from somewhere far away, having heard of the masks in the news. So it made it sound like they came somewhere across the seas like Galar or Unova, because of course the whole Kitakami stuff does not happen in Paldea/Spain, it happens in Japan. So how could they travel from far away to this place in Japan called Kitakami when the place they're from looks like Japan to start with? Okay, so let me actually take a step back and explain just how the game explains this situation, where the greedy Pokemon came from. So pretty much they say the news of the mask traveled to distant lands, and then a group of greedy Pokemon made their way to Kitakami. But you don't necessarily have to look at it as a connecting statement, right? It could just be that the news made it to distant lands, and then this other group of Pokemon that were actually nearby made their way to Kitakami, right? It's kind of a fake out that Gamefreak put those two statements back to back. And it makes more sense, right? If the grandma and grandpa wanted something precious, they would ask for something that's relatively doable, like these masks that are in the region nearby, if they're in Johto and these masks are in Kitakami. It's not like they'd ask for some rare mega shard from Kalos. It makes more sense that they're living in this connected landmass to where the masks are, so they ask Pecharunt to go get it for them. And so Pecharunt starts this journey going from Johto to Kitakami. But no one knows, right? This is just me. I have fun reading into all this stuff. If you go back and look at the cutscene, they never specifically say that the Loyal 3 came from somewhere far away. At the rawest form, all it says is a group of greedy Pokemon soon made their way to Kitakami, not something like to the faraway land of Kitakami. And you know, Momotaro's a Japanese folktale. We saw the second half of the story play out in Kitakami, which is Japan. It would make sense if the first part of the story, with them finding the boy and the peach, also took place in Japan. And so it was just an overall adaptation of this Japanese folktale. And I know there's some speculation whether this Pecharunt story is real or not. It has to be real. I think if Gamefreak had more time, they would have programmed that entire Pecharunt cutscene you saw into the game. Not only are there hints to it in game, like Ogerpon reacting to Pecharunt and the way Pecharunt reacts to his loyal companions being on the opposite side to him, but there's actually some cool parallels you can draw from that untold story that match up with details in game. Like for example, right, when you go to Oni Mountain, the little hole in the mountain that Ogerpon lives in, you see this dark spot on the ground. And if you go to the video, they show that exact spot being where Ogerpon's friend fell after losing to the Loyal 3. So you can paint the picture, right? He probably passed away there, and then Ogerpon, or maybe the original mask maker that provided the masks, came up and was kind of friends with Ogerpon for a bit and give a proper cremation to its fallen friend. And so that's why it's a dark spot there. I know it's sometimes confusing what's real in Pokemon, but this untold story for sure is real. So you can use other parts of that untold story and try to draw conclusions, like how one of the Pokemon the Loyal 4 are riding is a Basculegion, which is a Pokemon that is thought to have become endangered, almost extinct, except a couple escaped from an older Sinnoh into parts of Kitakami. Since the first 4 regions are in Japan, you can imagine Basculin generally exists in all the regions, and they could have found it on the way from Johto to Kitakami. But at the same time, if you look at the untold story, they show them riding the Basculegions and the Lapras near the end of their journey. So it sounds like if they did come from somewhere far away, that they were in the vicinity of Kitakami, where we know Basculegion are anyway, to have then ridden it for the last stretch of their journey. But either way, you can't deny how Japanese the very start of this looks. You know, they got the sliding doors, they're sitting on these mats, and the grandma's doing that Japanese way of sitting, what it's called, Saiza, where you sit with your knees folded. They're drinking tea out of the cups. This whole crap looks like Japanese culture. Maybe Pecharunt is so stupid he traveled around the world to go from Johto to Kitakami, who knows. But this theory goes based off the idea that maybe Pecharunt did originate from Johto. And this would be something cool Gamefreak could do. Kind of in the same way that we had Ursaluna introduced in Legends Arceus, and then they expanded on it in a cool way directly in the next games. We had Pecharunt introduced, right? And we could only see the villain side to it until we finished the game and saw this untold story. So how cool would it be to then jump into a Legends Johto in the time period that Pecharunt is with these grandparents? And you get to see the positive side to Pecharunt. Maybe you even can go to this exact house and see Pecharunt as an NPC hanging out here and aid Pecharunt in a couple journeys. Because Pecharunt isn't inherently evil, it only did evil things, which it does take the blame for doing because it was trying to impress the grandparents. So in the same vein as the Ursaluna, you could have Pecharunt expanded on and you get to see more of the innocent side of it. And it's also a really cool feeling to imagine that after playing Scarlet and Violet and seeing the end of Pecharunt's journey, to then be able to play Legends Johto and see the very start of it. Every time you interact with Pecharunt in that Legends Johto, you know ultimately where that journey is gonna lead it. It's eventually gonna set out, get its ass pretty much killed by Ogerpon, and be sleeping for hundreds of years until the epilogue DLC happens. It's a really cool idea. Okay, that's enough rambling, let's go to your theory now. So yeah, perhaps the old couple in Pecharunt are actually from Johto. Perhaps in Legends Johto, we can meet the old couple who, just like in the video, never got to have their own child. As you progress through the story, you can do a side quest where you can encounter Pecharunt and see that he's really lonely and wants companionship. So you bring him to the old couple, similar to the side quest where you give a Wurmple to a trainer at the beginning of Legends Arceus. Hold on there. See, I didn't read this email before I started rambling, but could you picture that we're the ones that brought, in Legends Johto, that brought Pecharunt to that couple that started his demise? That's a wild thought. And just as in Legends Arceus, the Wurmple evolves as time passes, the old couple's house will get more decked out with fancy furniture and clothing as time passes. So each time you go, you see more stuff, you see more stacked up mythical Pecha berries. And you'd always see the grandma and grandpa with those purple eyes and talking in weird ways. Maybe at first when they're talking, all they see is mochi mochi, and then afterwards they start to get used to it and their greed awakens, which is how I just assume it works. I assume after a while, you stop saying mochi mochi. And as a result for giving them Pecharunt, the old couple will give you Pecharunt's binding mochi, which can then be used as a lure item like the cakes in Legends Arceus, but was way more effective. That's kind of terrifying, Pecharunt. Do not give me that binding mochi. I kind of feel like we can't get too comfortable with Pecharunt because the whole point with Pecharunt is that it was trying so hard to impress those grandmas because that was like the only close connection it had to someone. So if Pecharunt were to build a bond with our character in Legends Johto, it would nullify that. So Pecharunt can't get close to us. Unless Pecharunt just felt a certain connection to those two, because just like the Momotaro story, that was effectively its adopted parents. So even though it got closer to you potentially, it felt a certain loyalty to them. I think if Pecharunt got this pivotal, by the way, this would just be a side quest, but if it got this deep a role in Legends Arceus, that they could introduce potential of a new loyal Pokemon, you know? Either way, this is a really cool idea, and it fits perfectly in what kind of visions Gamefreak has when they're making the first Legends game. There's a lot of fancy potential for writing, like the Spirit Tomb, right? You had the girl that was the last spirit, and you're gathering it together. It's just a wholesome theory that won't end badly for the old couple in Pecharunt. Let's hope the old couple doesn't want any masks at the end of Legends Johto. Come on, bro. How sad would it be if at the end of Legends Johto, oh god, why am I gonna make myself sad saying this? So at the end of Legends Johto, right, there's a secret quest after you've beaten the game. If you go back to the old couple's house, you could talk to Pecharunt and the old couple and they'll say, oh, Pecharunt's going off on a journey. Do you want to see it off? And you get to walk Pecharunt to like the shore and see it sail off. And you never get to see it again, and we know exactly what happens. Why am I getting sad thinking it's a freaking Pokemon game? Anyhow, y'all, make sure you shank that like button. We've got about 3 weeks until Pokemon Day. Very soon, I'll start listing the days itself, but we're getting near all of this being revealed and seeing just what Pokemon has in store for us. If you want to send me an email, it's here, but I got a lot more to talk about, so I'll see y'all either later today or tomorrow. Take care.